Well, hello, and welcome once again to 25 o'clock. I'm your host, Dan Drago. Welcome to episode 35 of 25 o'clock. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad we're all here. Episode 35 of 25 o'clock. I'm not going to give it any fanfare. It seems like every 5 episodes, an episode either ends in a 5 or it ends in a 0, and I try to treat it with some amount of ceremony. It's completely unnecessary. It's episode 35, 25 o'clock. I'm glad you're here. It's a great episode. This week on the show, Noelle Picara, singer-songwriter from Wilmington, Delaware. Outstanding talent, outstanding human being. We have an amazing talk. Probably one of the more emotionally in-depth conversations I've had on this show in quite some time, if not ever. I don't want to give anything away, but it gets deep. It gets a little dark. It was a wonderful conversation with Noelle Picara. And I'm going to talk about Noelle more in just a minute. But first, we got to talk about 25o'clockpod.com. That's the website here. That's where we hang our web hat. 25o'clockpod.com. If this is your first episode of 25 o'clock, you got to go to 25o'clockpod.com. I have my archive up there where you can check out all the old episodes. I have a links page where you can check out everyone who's ever had anything to do with the show, ever been on the show, if I've ever played their record, or even mentioned them at length. Chances are there's a link to more information about them on the Friends and Neighbors page at 25o'clockpod.com. Hey, if this isn't your first episode, 25o'clockpod.com, hey, good for you. You're part of the team. We're all part of the team. But I guarantee you there's probably an episode you missed or something that you want to know more about. You can go to 25o'clockpod.com, get all that information. Sign the mailing list. Check out the Facebook, the Twitter. Those are really the only 2 ways that I engage socially on the media. So 25o'clockpod.com. Go there. Enjoy it. I enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. Anyway, I said on social media that I would tell you a quick story about how I did not attend the Shark Tape show from last Friday. For those of you who don't remember or don't know, episode 34, the previous episode, I had on Stephen Lorick, the frontman for Shark Tape. I was so glad to have him on. He's an amazing talent. We had a great talk. He played some music. It was sweet. I was so happy to have him here. And I swore up and down on the show and off the show as well that I was going to be at Shark Tape show at Boot and Saddle on Friday night. They're opening up for the Figs, who are one of my favorite bands of all time. So it was like a new favorite band and an old favorite band together. I was excited. So I get there, and I'm excited, and I'm waiting for the show, and then I find out that my bank card has been cloned, and some morally loose people, let's say that, in the Miami, Florida area are spending my money like it's going out of style. Thankfully, I caught this in time. So I had to spend the next hour plus on the phone with my bank, with the police, with a fraud department, explaining what was going on, letting them know things, shutting everything down. It was a pain in the ass. It really was. So because of that, I wasn't able to see Shark Tape or the Figs, and I had to leave the venue to go take care of this stuff. And on my way out the door, I did see a couple of guys in Shark Tape. I tried in my hurried nature to express to them why I was leaving, that it wasn't because I didn't love them anymore. Of course I love them. I will never not love Shark Tape. It wasn't because I didn't love them. It was because, some shit was happening, and I had to go take care of it. So guys in Shark Tape, if I didn't express it to you well enough, some shit happened, and I had to go, and I'm so sorry. And I'm sure you guys played an awesome show, and I heard the Figs played an awesome show, and I'm pissed that I missed it. So, yeah, that's what happened there. The moral of the story is, hey, just keep an eye on your shit. Just keep an eye on the security of your stuff. And sometimes, no matter how hard you keep an eye on the security of your stuff is still going to happen. So you got to be ready for it. I'm actually kind of proud of myself. I didn't freak out. I didn't yell at anybody. I didn't even yell at anyone on the phone. And, you always yell at people on the phone because they're not people. They're just a disembodied voice on the other end, and you feel like you can just yell at them. I didn't do any of those things. I proceeded in a calm, or as calm as I could, manner, and everything's cool and everything's taken care of. And, I don't know what it is about Florida, but it seems that whenever someone's credit card information gets stolen, their bank account information gets stolen, the culprit is usually engaging in illicit transactions at a Walmart. somewhere in the southern Florida area. I don't mean to disparage people who live in Florida who are not identity thieves. I'm sure there are a very large number of you, and keep doing what you're doing, non-identity thieves of Florida. But for the rest of you identity thieves of Florida, I want to say this, and I want to warn my mom. I'm going to use some language right now. To all the identity thieves out there in Florida and beyond, I just want to say this. Fuck you. Seriously. Fuck you. Why you got to do that? You're not going after a rich fat cat. I don't own mansions. I don't own sports cars. I don't own fur coats and precious gems. I'm a dude who works and does a podcast out of his basement in South Philadelphia. You know? You got my bank account. Great. You got into my savings account too and started moving money around. I pay my fucking mortgage from that. You know? So, like, to all you identity thieves out there, chances are you're not punching up, all right? You're just punching your neighbor. You're just punching a regular dude or a regular woman out there who's just trying to earn a buck, have a nice place to live, go out to eat sometimes, and just make a good life for themselves. So, once again, to all identity thieves out there, fuck you and your stupid fucking face. I feel better now. I apologize to anyone who's an identity thief out there and was offended by me telling you to go fuck yourself. But that's what I want you to do, identity thief. I want you to do that. Whew. I feel cleansed. Thank you all for allowing me that right there. Anyway, what else do we want to talk about real quick? For those of you in the Philadelphia music world, and those of you kind of keeping up on what we keep up on over here, you know that this week was very interesting. There was the introduction of a live music bill that sought to create a registry for artists that they would have to register with the venue, and the venue would then have to give that information to the police so the police could check up on you and make sure that you should be having a show. That bill was defeated. There were a lot of other aspects to that bill. Basically, for those of you out there who followed this, you all know what happened. And for those of you who aren't from Philadelphia, you either don't care or you just aren't aware of what happened over the last week. And you can go Google Philadelphia live music bill and read all about it. I am pretty proud at how the music community came together and constructively worked with members of City Hall to sort of squash the bill in its current form. Doesn't mean another bill like it or similar to it isn't going to rise up out of the ashes of it, but everyone's more vigilant now, and that's a good thing. So, like I said, go Google Philadelphia live music bill to get more information about that. Check out the articles written by The Key, which is the social media arm of WXPN FM here in Philadelphia. They wrote two of the best articles that were written about it. They were well thought out. They were factual. They were even-handed. They gave as much information as possible. They didn't resort to name-calling or quoting people with name-calling. They were really some really great journalism was done by The Key on this issue. So check out articles from The Key, WXPN's social media music news site, to learn more about the Philadelphia Live Music Bill, which was defeated thanks to the union of this scene and everyone expressing their displeasure with the bill. Most of y'all did a great job. Some of y'all used it as an excuse to shoot your mouth off and say a bunch of hateful stuff. And you people know who you are, and I don't really want anything to do with you. I don't quite hold you in as low esteem as identity thieves, but, come on. Just don't run your mouth off like a stupid jerk. Maybe be constructive and try to help. And a lot of people did help. So, yay, Philadelphia music scene. I'm proud to be a part of you. You guys are great. And again, big thanks to The Key, WXPN's news site, for writing some really, really good journalism on. You can't write journalism, Dan. For conducting some really great journalism on the subject. So that's all I'm going to say about that. It's all out there. It's all out there for you to read. Anyway, let's talk about the show this week real quick. Let's talk about Noelle Picara. She is an amazing talent. Like I said, singer-songwriter from Wilmington, Delaware. She plays the piano, and she plays it so nice, and she employs a lot of monster imagery, not just in her songs, but in her stage show. When I first met her, she was getting on stage with her piano in sort of full zombie makeup. It was amazing, and it was outstanding, and she's got a great voice, and she has really powerful songs. And like I said at the top of the show, we talk pretty in depth about some pretty emotional issues. I'm going to say right off the top that Noelle is a sexual abuse survivor, and that she wears that on her sleeve. She wants people to know. She wants people to know that she's a survivor. She wants people to know that she's living her life, and she wants other people who are troubled by the same other abuse survivors that it's okay to talk about it, that it's okay to put it out there, and that it's okay to be angry and messed up and not okay with any of it. And we talk about all of that in the interview. But to learn more about Noelle, go to noellepicara.com. She has a record out called My Own Frankenstein, which is a great record. I highly recommend getting it. I think it's up on her Bandcamp for pay what you will. So, hey, support a great artist. And she's involved in a project called Alone with All of You, which we talk about in the interview as well. But I want to give some information about that project right up at the top. Alone with All of You is a very, very cool artistic production. It's part musical performance, it's part theater, it's part exhibition. There's an audience interaction part with it as well. They're doing it at the White Pines Theater in Elkins Park. That's on February 6th and February 14th. All are welcome. Again, Alone with All of You at White Pines Theater in Elkins Park, which is to the north of Philadelphia. February 6th and February 14th. Go to noellepicara.com for all the information about that show. It looks to be really, really cool. And without further ado, let's just get right into the conversation. Let's talk to Noelle Picara here on 25 O'Clock. I mean, the obvious question to ask you is, where did the idea come from to do this, the Alone with All of You project? But I know that's the name of one of your songs on the Frankenstein album.
Yeah.
And I'm calling it by the wrong name, aren't I?
It's My Own Frankenstein.
My Own Frankenstein.
I call it that sometimes, too, as a nickname, though. The Frankenstein album. The zombie album.
Yep.
Frankenstein album.
Yep. And you worked with, you did that at Seventh Wave. That's
I did.
That's Jason Rubal's studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is a fascinating dude.
Very interesting.
He is. He has, I dubbed him once. I said, he's the Steve Albini of Pennsylvania. Because he definitely has, those, core opinions about, how to go about doing what he does, and he has a code. He's like a samurai.
Yeah. He definitely has his own way. I think our opinions diverged at some point. Yeah,
and that's that'll definitely happen in a working relationship.
Yeah, but he's very good at capturing the sound authentically, which is really what I wanted for that album. And I think it really, I'm with the vinyl especially, it really sounds exactly like I'm there in the room, which is exactly what I wanted from that album. So that was really effective.
Yeah, I definitely heard that on there too. I thought to myself, this isn't terribly treated.
No,
this isn't. I mean, it sounds good, and obviously, even in any aspect of recording, there's still some tweaking here and there, and some polishing, and some. I always think the recorded version is like an idealized version that you want to make of the song, because that's the thing that is the most easily accessible and can be played over and over and over again. So you want to get it right.
Yeah, but I said, I wanted people to hear the spit in my mouth and my breaths, and to hear the little clicks of things that were happening in the room. I wanted it to be really that real, because I think there's so much nowadays where everything is so overprocessed and robotic, and it sounds so fake, that I wanted to be like the antithesis of that.
And and when it sounds fake, people come to take it as normal. But I listen to it, and it's, at least to me, it's alienating to me. Where I'm just I'll listen to a vocal track, and I'm like, that guy's got to breathe at some point.
Right.
It has to happen.
Yeah, I definitely always want my breaths in. I don't ever like my breaths edited out. And I think too, with the whole idea of my focus of my music, is when everybody tries to be so polished all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and you're pretending like you don't have any flaws.
You're pretending you're not a human being.
Yeah, I was just listening to a 21 Pilots song this morning, and he's saying in the lyrics, be careful of music that sounds flawless. You know, be wary of people who seem too polished.
Yeah, yeah.
And don't trust lyrics and music that sounds flawless.
Yeah. I was just having a discussion today on the internet. We were talking about, someone talked about autotune, and I said, like, the extent that autotune gets used now is almost like, I always say, I'm like, do they know they have it turned up too much? Because the original autotune was very much there to be seamless and not to be heard at all, and now it's being used like an effect, like tremolo or reverb or something like that, to a point that when I first started hearing, like on that Big Cher song that she had, where she had like the little pitch shifting in there, I said, like, obviously that's a trick, like, and we're all meant to hear it as a trick. We're like, what a cool thing that they made her voice do on a computer or on a keyboard or something like that. And so I thought to myself, well, no one else is clearly being fooled by this. Like, everyone hears this for what it is, and it became more and more apparent to me. People being like, no, I just can't get my voice to do that thing. I'm like, you mean the processed computer thing? They're like, yeah. I'm like,
that's because you're not a robot.
That's because I was like, Kraftwerk did this in the 70s, but it was an effect. Like, and they wanted to be robots. Like, they wanted music to sound like being robot. That was part of their art right there.
It's different if you're Daft Punk.
Yeah, and even Daft Punk too. Like, they have such. They themselves, I kind of think of them as our generation's Kraftwerk a little bit, in that, like, they have a persona that is non-human at all, like they're space aliens or whatever. And I think that's cool. I think the whole persona, or the creating of the fictionalized persona in performance, is, a tale as old as time, and I always like seeing what people do with that. But like when soul singers do it and stuff like that, I'm just like, just sing. Like Adele does, and I'm sure they pitch correct Adele on records a little bit. Everybody gets a little bit of it on there, but I was like, when Adele sings live, like, she can do it. Or like when Florence from Florence and the Machine sings live, like, she can do it. She didn't need a machine all along.
I think for me it's less about, enhancing, the idea of enhancing, but it's more about, I really think you're not getting the full picture of a person, and I really think our voice is a true individual expression of our soul. You're not really getting the full picture if you're editing things out to make it sound a certain way. And I really just think that if everybody just put all their flaws out there, because we all think that we're the only ones covering and that everybody else has got it all together.
Yeah.
And so really one of my main goals with my music is to just turn myself inside out and put everything out there so that other people feel comfortable with that too, because I think we would all just, feel so much more relaxed if we'd
be less anxious.
Yeah, just stop trying to pretend like we're perfect all the time.
It'd be like, you're freaked out right now too, so am I.
Right? Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that you come to terms with becoming an adult. If I read all your bios and stuff and did the math right, I think you're my age. You're 35.
36.
Oh, 36. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like as you get older, and I mean, I don't have kids or anything like that. So like as I get older, I'm like 35. I was like, I don't feel that different. I mean, I feel a little different, but like not that different than when I was in my 20s, other than I'm just older and like I own a house. Like that's about how different I feel. And then you realize that everyone else is like, no, I don't feel like an adult either. Mm-hmm. I asked my father once too. I said, when did you start feeling like an adult? He says, you never do.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandfather said one time, I think when he was about 80, he said, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Yeah.
That's great.
I think, we think we're going to get to some point. It reminds me of that Pink Floyd song from Dark Side of the Moon where, the first one, I think it's the second one on the album where he's talking about, when you miss the starting gun. But you think there's some line that's going to delineate you at some point. You're going to become something different. And
yeah, it's like I turned 25 or I turned 30 or I turned 40 or something like that. Although I do believe that turning 30, I call it the end of a decade of bullshit. I feel that in your 20s that like no one takes you seriously because you're just some 20-something year old kid. And when I turned 30, I don't know, I think I gained a little more confidence in myself where I was just like, screw it. I'm like, I'm 30. I took it more as like, I say to myself, I'm like, I'm 35 years old. I don't have to put up with this. That's mostly what it is. It's like an excuse to not put up with like things that you used to put up with in people and in situations. As a musician too, like early in my 30s, I stopped touring because I was just like, I'm done with this. Like, this isn't what I want. And I'm now old enough and mature enough to admit to myself, this is not what I want.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, when I turned 35, I was just much more aware of how short a lifespan is. When I was younger, I thought that I was going to have time to do all of these totally different things. And then when you get to about halfway through and you realize like, oh, this is short. Like, I better just do what I'm doing and really enjoy it and do the best that I can with what I'm doing instead of, I think I got to a cutoff point of dreaming about future possibilities and instead just concentrating on what I'm doing right now and doing it really well. Because I don't know how much time I have.
Exactly.
None of us do.
Yeah. I did this like about 2 years ago when I started drafting the whole idea of the show together. Suddenly I just woke up and it became imperative that I start doing this. Like, because I was 33, maybe almost 34. And I was like, if not now, man, when? Like, I danced around this for like 6 or 8 months and like tried to plan it out and tried to make it all like, I'm like, well, it should go like this. And then I was just like,
just start,
just do it. Like nothing's good at the start. Like,
you have to figure things out as you go. You can't really plan for everything ahead of time. And I think for me, this show is really a lot about that because I was playing in a lot of bars and, playing places that weren't necessarily a good fit for me and just to kind of play.
It's a place to play. They'll have you.
Yeah. But eventually when you get to a certain age, you don't really feel like doing that anymore. And I want to do something that's like really 100% what I want to do with the audience that I want. And I want the space to be something that the audience can experience that's metaphorical and has to do with my show. And so, have something that I created and have people who care involved and people who care in the audience.
Yeah. I think you're really hitting that with, I mean, I obviously haven't seen it yet. No one's seen it yet because it's not up yet.
It hasn't happened
yet.
But
Alone with All of You, which opens February 6th and then February 14th.
That's right.
At White Pines Theater up in Elkins Park. I'm going to put all this on the website.
Great.
But when I was reading your thing about it on your website where you talked about how you were kind of letting go of the rehearsed aspect of playing live and just kind of letting stuff happen. Are you actually going to go up on stage and sort of just kind of make up a song, like kind of in front of everybody?
Well, first of all, there is no stage. So during the exhibition part of the show, which is the first 30 minutes, we are going to be separated from the audience within the center of the labyrinth. And yes, it's an actual labyrinth. It's stage curtains.
Yeah.
And then later on, the labyrinth is going to change and come down. David Bowie is not going to be in the labyrinth, unfortunately.
That would be something.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that movie a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So,
he's staring at you over my shoulder.
I see that. I know. It's really cool.
Ever since he died, everyone has come down, sit in that chair, and just be like, "Wow, I got David Bowie staring at me." I'm like, he's the show's spirit animal.
Right.
He's in the old location too. He also stared down at whatever we were doing.
Yeah.
So no David Bowie in the labyrinth. And then you had engaged the public. You'd engaged other people in like answering these like this anonymous questionnaire, which I found very, very interesting. And then you're going to put some of the responses to that like up on the.
That will be the exhibition. Mm-hmm. So, for the last couple of years, I've been interested in how can I involve the audience in writing. I think part of it is I just get tired of myself. Like, how much stuff do I just want to sing about myself? Like that just gets really old after a while. And then also, I feel like audiences nowadays want to be involved in the creative process. They don't really want to just be passive observers because everything that we do is interactive nowadays. Yeah. So I decided that really the touchstones of this show would have to be these 7 invitations. And I decided not to write questions because I thought questions are very like an interrogation. They're demanding an answer. Whereas in just a half sentence that someone can finish seems a lot less intrusive, and it's just a lot more welcoming. So I really tried to develop 7 ideas about being alone and being connected with other people, and what it truly means to be connected with other people, and what kind of things we want to hide from others and that keep us from connecting with other people. Because I think in my life, feeling isolated from other people has been the biggest hurdle that I've had to overcome in my life, is just having a sense of being isolated. And that was the biggest struggle for me growing up, and probably until pretty recently. I'm coming out of that more and more, I think, through my work and connections with people. Yeah. So I'm really interested in helping to kind of guide other people through that process, but I'm not a therapist or anything. So I try to just do it through my own experience and through art, through writing and music. So I wanted to get people thinking about those things. And then it's really great. People have been so honest in the survey that I sent out. I have about 70 responses to the invitations. And for example, like when no one's around.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing the same things when no one's around. And I love those ideas, because I think there's so many things that we feel like we're the only ones who do this thing. Like everybody's picking their nose. Everybody is, singing in the shower, dancing around in their underpants. Like, I mean, it's really interesting. So that's why I want to display all of this in one place in public. Because just like we were talking about earlier, if you can take all of that stuff and put it outside of yourself, I think it makes it a lot easier to be connected with others. And I think Valentine's Day can be really hard for a lot of people who feel isolated, because it's a kind of a smack in the face of like, yep, I don't have anybody, and everybody else is out doing those romantic things, and I'm a huge loser, and I'm weird, and nobody's ever going to understand me. Just like all of that stuff gets brought up.
You get about a week out of the year where that really gets rubbed.
Yeah, and I think,
face.
I mean, the holidays, like Thanksgiving, all that stuff in a row in the wintertime, like the darkest time of year. It's like Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, New Year's is somewhere in there. Yeah. So if you're someone who has complicated family issues, or not in a relationship, or not really happy with it, it's just like a reminder of those things. So I really wanted to give people a venue to kind of start thinking about, what does real connection mean? Do I really need to feel isolated from other people? Is there a way that I can feel connected with other people? Because I think we all just kind of do what we can. Like, I mean, you were saying you don't have kids. I don't feel comfortable having kids. Yeah. I don't think that's something that I'm ever, a way of relating to the world that I'm ever going to be comfortable with. I really enjoy relating to people through my music, and I connect with people that way. And maybe somebody connects with others by making them really great sandwiches, or just...
No, that's true. That's the way. I really think that is an equalizer right there, is food and art.
Yeah. Or, some people do it by being a bodyguard, or like they give to the world in some way. And,
or they're like a nurturer of other people's children, or
right.
Things
Yeah.
like that.
And that's whatever way you choose to relate to the world is okay. We don't all have to, not everybody has to get married. Not everybody has to have children. Not, all of these things, I think we can all find a way to relate. And I think like the commercialization of these holidays, like Valentine's Day, it just makes us feel like we all have to have a certain thing, like that smiling people in the magazine or whatever. So I think art always has to challenge the media and, just remind us all of the fact that really connecting with other people is actually something different. It's not this commercialized, romanticized
You don't
picture.
connect with someone by buying them something. You connect with someone in a whole series of other ways. No, definitely. And I can speak from being I've been married for 10 years this year. But both of us, we rage against that particular machine right there too, where we're just like, well, that's not how we interact with each other, and that's not how we expect other people to interact with each other. Like,
right.
We don't really do a thing this time of year. That's just not how we're wired. And at holidays too and stuff like that, I don't know. It's everyone's different, but even just as married people, because you get married, then everyone's just like, "When are you gonna have kids?" And I'm just like, "Well, number one, it's none of your business, and
right.
number two, see number one." Like, it's like
there's a comedian who has a great stand-up, and he was saying, when you get married, everyone keeps asking, when are you gonna have kids? And he said, yeah, but then I try to go to my friends who have kids and I'm like, okay, when are you going to die? When are you going to die? Like, what's the next thing? Like, why are you always asking people about the next thing that they're going to do?
And people make their choices, and then people are all forced to rationalize their choices. Either way, by either buying in, you either rationalize your choice of buying into the whole culture, the whole cultural norm, or you rationalize your choice by not buying in to the whole cultural norm. I think it definitely happens on both sides, of the of the fence right there. And I think any of us really need to. I don't know. I think if we spend a little less time trying to rationalize what we did and just
did it.
Yeah. Like, someone had 5 kids.
This is just what I do.
Yeah, someone had 5 kids. Great.
Awesome.
That's awesome, man. And I have none. Okay, that's how I'm doing
There's
it.
no right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what Benjamin Lloyd and I talked about when we were developing this show, he was a huge collaborative creative partner in developing this show. He's the director of White Pines. So he made a really interesting point that connecting with other people is scary.
Oh, yeah.
And that sometimes people feel more comfortable with, like, oh, well, I'll just buy the chocolate and the roses or whatever, because they don't want to look at what actual connection means.
Well, it's an incredibly vulnerable act to get involved, because you're asking someone to open up to you, and in all fairness, you need to reciprocate. You need to do it as well. And there's always the underlying fear. It comes down to fear. Is what if I open up and they don't like what they see?
Right.
What does
Will
that say
I crumble?
about me? Yeah. What
Will
does that
I
say
be
about
crushed?
me? Am I really the freak that I always thought I was?
Right.
And getting back to your whole thing about
Absolutely.
everyone writing in the things they do when they're alone. Everyone's just like, oh, I do that. Yeah, that's not weird.
Yeah, and it's really nice for me just to read this. It's funny, I have an invitation. The last one is, my life seemed worthwhile the day. And I feel like my life seemed worthwhile the day I got all these responses to this survey that I wrote. And I saw that everybody felt the same way, and everybody has all these weird things. And I'm so touched that everyone was so incredibly honest with this. And, I just feel really good about that. It makes me feel better about creating art and saying things about my life, because I know now that everybody's kind of feeling the same things.
Yeah. We're all these tightly wrapped balls of neuroses, just trying to get through.
And there's a lot of things I have no answer for and that don't make any sense in life and are just hard. And the only response that I have to that is just to try to sing songs about it and share them with other people, and that maybe we can all, through that, just get through those things.
Yeah.
And they're never going to really make sense necessarily.
It's making order out of the chaos.
Right.
And not even trying to necessarily find one unifying answer to be like, well, this is what it's all about. Because a lot of people do that either with, with commercial things or religion or particular lifestyle choices. People definitely say like, oh, well, the idea of a multifaceted answer, or the idea that there isn't one, is as scary. So, got to fill your life with something concrete.
Yeah, everybody wants to get it right.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get away from that. And it's interesting what the improv actors bring to the show.
Yeah, I was interested in that because I was interested how that was going to intertwine with, because this is not a show. Like, this is not a show in the way that you and I have done shows before, where you go sit on stage, you play your songs for 30 to 60 minutes, everyone claps in between them and is polite, and then you're done.
Right. So getting back to, you had a question about, am I going to make up new songs on stage? Yeah. Well, first of all, there's no stage. Like I said in the beginning, we're separated, but then once the Labyrinth comes down, we're just in the middle of everybody. And everybody can sit where they want. There's really not, like, the seats are not arranged in a way where people have to stay in a certain place. Mm-hmm. And the actors, I'm really taking down that whole idea of, I rehearse for a show, I polish it, I have it a certain way. Then I sit on a stage and I play that show for you and you listen. That is out the window. You know, like the show hasn't happened yet, so I can't tell you exactly how it's going to be because the audience is a huge part of the show. And I don't want to scare people because it's not like nobody's going to get pulled up on stage.
Yeah. It's not that kind of show.
It's not that kind of show. But
well, again, there is no stage.
Right. I mean, but it's not like we're going to put anybody on the spot. Like, people can certainly come and just watch. But just the fact that proximity to the audience and the fact that the actors are moving in among the audience and we're all doing improv in that moment. Just the audience being there, just their presence is a huge factor that influences the design of this show. So when I say audience participation, I really don't want to get people freaked out because I know, like, I'd be a little wary sometimes about going to a show. And,
yeah. It's why you don't sit in the front row at a comedy club.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't want to get called out or anything. And it's definitely not that kind of show. But I'm just saying the audience being there and being in that particular moment, the show is set up as such that every time that we do it, it's going to be different. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard for me to say exactly how it's going to be. But the structure is that I'm reacting to what the actors do musically, and they are reacting to me, and also they're doing improv based on the 7 invitations. And it's really interesting because as we rehearse, when they're doing scenes, each scene does kind of move from some sort of real life conflict that people go through with other people and then resolving itself to some place of vulnerability and connection. Yeah.
And that's always, I'm familiar with like the way that Bright Invention works. They're not, when people hear improv, they immediately have their ideas of what that is, and it's usually comedy related. But I had back on the beginning of the show, I had on a woman named Jen McMillan, who was a previous director and a member of Bright Invention, and she kind of laid it all out to me of like, well, this is how they differ from like the comedy improv, and not to say that they think that they're better than comedy improv, but they're just doing a different kind of thing right there.
Right. Yeah. So it's not improv the way that you would see like Wayne Brady do.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And it's really interesting to me to work with them. They're much more comfortable with this idea that the show, you know, just totally being present in the moment, and that we don't really know where it's going to go when you're in being in front of an audience. That's a huge place of vulnerability to be in. And I think we often, you know, as musicians, we think that we're being vulnerable on the stage, but when everything is planned out and we have a certain, I mean, it never goes exactly according to plan, but I guess I'm on the spectrum of how much as things are planned. I'm moving towards more in this show. Like, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm just going to like get up on stage and do whatever.
Yeah.
But
you've got some bullet points.
Yeah. It's like signposts, I feel like.
It's like Curb on Curb Your Enthusiasm, where they basically have like, not to bring back to comic, but like they've got some beats, or like Christopher Guest when he makes films, like they've got some beats that they want to hit. Mm-hmm. There's relationships that they want to establish. There's little things that they want to happen. But other than that, they're like, how we get there is a completely different thing.
Yeah, and I'm letting there be moments in the show when I just say something. And I mean, of course, we do this in concerts too. Mm-hmm. You just say something about what's happening in the moment, or just sing lyrics about what's happening in the moment, or, you know, things like that. I'm not really going to completely make up a new song in front of everybody. Like, it's not that loose. I don't think I can go that far yet. Like, I'm a planner and I'm a practicer.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're a teacher too, so that makes sense. That
But then again, like in the classroom too, I have
you gotta be ready.
A huge amount of plans every day. And then there's like, I mean, I have 5th grade choir of 40 11-year-olds. So once 40 11-year-olds are in the equation, anything can happen. Yes. So I'm used to that in that respect. But I do like to have a lot of ideas to fall back on and a lot of plans. There's more space in this show for spontaneity than would typically be in another one of my concerts. And what's cool too about this is there's just so many elements involved. There's costuming, there's the labyrinth, there's the actors, there's the exhibition, there's ways for the audience to just anonymously write suggestions and contribute them the way that Bright Invention, I think, normally does their shows. So there's just a lot of variables involved where it could go in many different directions.
Well, it sounds both challenging, not only for you guys as performers, and for you as you're definitely stepping out of your comfort zone right here. But it's challenging for an audience too, which is always interesting because sometimes audiences don't want to be challenged. They want the same old. They want I want to go sit in a seat and then you do the thing. And then I clap, and then we all go home.
Honestly, people can do that at our show too.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they also have to be involved in what's going on, but I think it is just challenging as an audience member to kind of come in and say this isn't what's normally expectations are a lot more open right now. We can kind of do whatever.
But I really wanted there to be. We talked about this a lot. I really wanted there to be a wide variety of possible experiences for the audience as well. Like for people who are bored of seeing the same old shows, this is awesome because if they walk in and they want to experience something different, great. If they want to write suggestions and sing along and make their own mask to wear, because we're doing masks in the show, awesome. But there's also room for if you're not quite sure about this thing, you kind of think it's interesting, but you don't really know, and you just want to kind of sit in the corner
and just see it happen.
There's totally space for that as well.
There are corners.
I've felt like that in many situations where it's I'm going to sit by the door because I'm not sure if this is going to get weird.
I
want to be able to back out of this if it gets weird.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and I've definitely been to a lot of performances of certain types where I'm just, it's the same thing. I'm just going to hang out in the back just in case.
Yeah. And for me, I think me being the person that I am, I developed this show with people like me in mind. Mm-hmm. I don't like people in my space. Yeah. I don't like people touching me. I don't like people that I don't know, coming up and talking to me really, so it's because I'm a cat person, because I just basically am a cat.
Yeah.
I totally was always thinking of that in my mind if I were an audience member. So there's nothing in the show where people are going to make you do anything. Yeah. You can totally come and just be I don't know about this.
Yeah. You can observe.
Yeah, so that's exactly why I developed the show this way. But if you're somebody who just wants to get right up in there, you can do that too.
Excellent. It's for everyone.
Just probably don't come up and touch me. I'm not going to react well to that.
It's an interesting improvised moment that's going to come out of that right there.
When I realized that just now. What's really funny is when I first moved to the U.S., I did a show at Fergie's Pub. Mm-hmm. And I did my CD release there. And this girl came up. I was on stage in the middle, and she came up and she was like, "You're glowing, you're amazing." And she started touching me, and I was like, do you want to sign up for my newsletter? I didn't know what to do. She was totally tripping on acid. Yes. And I was just I was totally freaked out.
It's thankfully you're not dangerous, you're just crazy.
Yeah, so now as I'm talking about people just showing up and doing whatever, I'm starting to get a little nervous.
There is in all aspects of there is a limit to what is acceptable and not acceptable in public. And, if you think it's going to be inappropriate, chances are you are correct.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, basically, the audience is going to watch the show, hopefully.
I find it interesting to I think you and I share similar sensibilities about space and humans. And I'm on the surface, I'm at times a fairly outgoing talking person, hence what we got going on right here. Mm-hmm. But I can very quickly turn it around and just be get the hell away from me.
Right.
But I find it interesting that both of us chose in some way or another to go into a performance style medium, which is completely counterintuitive if you think about it.
Well, it's not actually for me. It's not because I feel uncomfortable relating to people often, like in just like social situations. I always feel super awkward. And for me, if I'm on stage and there's a clear line between me and you, I'm good.
I'm the thing and you sit there.
Yeah.
You have a role in the situation, whereas opposed to like just showing up to a party and being like, here, meet these people. You're just like, what if I don't want to?
Yeah, or like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to do. But if I'm on stage and there's a line between me and the audience and I'm playing a character and I know what I'm supposed to be doing, I feel very comfortable being really vulnerable and open and telling everybody everything and putting myself out there. Like I said, that's my way of relating to the world. And in this show, I am challenging myself to not have there be so much separation between me and everybody else. I am going to go into the audience at the end of the show and we're all going to sing together. Again, if you want to, if you don't want, you can just sit in the corner. But like, that's scary for me. Like that's terrifying to me, but I'm going to do that. But I'm challenging myself so that I don't, it's part of my sense of isolation is like Mitch Hedberg says in his stand-up one time, he's like, I was hanging out at a bar and nobody was talking to me because I just did a show. You know, like the whole idea that like when you're the performer, you're somehow different from everyone else and then no one talks to you.
And there's all that perception of like, there's a perception too, especially with artists where it's just like, would they even want to talk to me? And in the end of the day, we're all people.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting. So we talked about that in the show as well. I think to some extent people want you to be different.
Yeah.
You know, and Benjamin Lloyd had said that about when we were creating the show, like in some way people do want you to be separate as a performer because they want you to live out some part of them that's kind of metaphorical or in their minds. And I'm good at that. Like I can embody a feeling and make it visual.
Yeah.
And act it out.
Well, your performances are very visual too, with like the costume changes and the headpieces and whatever the heck you're sticking to your eyes that particular night. I always wanted to remark on that, just because we go back a few years from seeing each other play and all that, and I would always just be fascinated whenever you would come into a room or like go onto a stage because I was always be like, what's she gonna do? And it was great, and that was a fun way, you know, because the tired singer-songwriter rap of just like, and there she is with guitar/piano, and they're gonna play some personal songs now, and we're all gonna sit very quietly and respectfully and observe them. But people like you who make it into more of a show, like with a capital S, like put the show back in. It is a show. It's show business, regardless of how we feel about the business aspect of it. And it is theatrical. In a way, do you have like a theater background at all, or? I
do, and I direct musical theater, so I do a lot of theater, and I teach every day in a theater. I mean, so I'm in theater all the time, and so I think I'm really a songwriter, you know. So I try to bring as much theater into that as possible, and I think part of it for me too is that I feel more comfortable being myself on stage if I'm a character.
Like, that makes sense, yeah.
If I'm not physically in character, like I'm not in a costume, I feel sometimes like I'm still in a costume, but I'm dressed up as like someone I'm pretending to be, you know. Part of being honest for me is putting on the costume and showing everybody, hey, I'm clearly in a costume right now while I'm on stage. Like I'm clearly trying to be something, and then now I can be honest and be myself. Yeah. Because otherwise, I feel like I'm hiding the fact that I'm in a costume.
Yeah, yeah. That's
some
meta.
Sort of costume.
That's meta on a lot of levels, right there.
So yeah, one of the songs that I wrote for this show is called "Faces." By the way, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but all of the songs I wrote for this show, I wrote in my sleep and woke up in the middle of the night and recorded them at like 4 a.m. And they didn't make a lot of sense to me, but somehow when I started doing them with the actors, they made sense. So this song that I wrote called Faces, and then I just had this idea that I wanted to do masks, is the whole idea of every time that you're with another person, you put on some sort of mask. And in the show, while I'm singing, the actors are going to do a silent improv where there's one actor with a mask, and every person that comes in, she puts on different masks to face those different people. And so, yeah, that whole idea that we're, and I think that has to do with connection as well. Like, how authentic can you really be?
Yeah.
I've always felt personally like, I think just because I grew up with a trauma background and as a child, I don't have a real strong identity of who I am. I feel very fractured, like almost like a kaleidoscope. And I feel like I can play all of these different characters authentically, but I don't feel like I have some like solid identity of like who I am. But I feel like I really am all of those characters that I'm playing. I don't think I'm being dishonest with people, but I'm definitely like one person with this situation and one person with this situation, and there's many different things, and we all do that to some extent. And so when are we actually being ourselves? Is it only when we're alone, or can we be ourselves with other people, or are we always ourselves in some way? Or, it's really, it's interesting to me. I don't have an answer to that. I'm just kind of exploring these questions in the show.
No, I think it's incredibly unique what you guys are doing there. I think bringing it in with the context of Valentine's Day and romantic love and connection in that way it's an interesting jumping off point to just be like, yeah, there's that way of looking at connection and relationship, and then there's 100 other ways to look at it as well. But getting to the idea, getting back to what you're saying about image and character and stuff like that, I think a lot of the images and characterizations that you have in your songs, and from what I'm familiar with you on stage, they're incredibly empowering. Especially from a female standpoint. I've read what you've said about like when you went through. I don't want to belittle it by calling it a phase, but that's how I make it all sense in my head. I'm like, oh, when
I don't
Noelle
take
was
it that way.
when Noelle was doing her zombie thing,
right?
Like, at first I thought it was like, I gotta tell you, the first time I saw it, I thought like, yeah, that'll work. Zombies are cool right now. Yeah, that's really cool. And then once I've read you explain it a lot more, I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. And that is actually way more fulfilling of a thing to know now.
Yeah.
The idea that it's, and you can probably explain this better than I can too, but the idea that, that women are expected to be one way, to be cute and nice and polite and nice, and zombies are not nice.
Right. Well, to me, I think it's a whole feeling, maybe an expression of anger and aggression. And I think that women are also taught to think of everybody else first.
Or to be meek.
I think that women are taught to be thinking of other people before themselves, and not to really make waves. And if you need anything yourself, that's somehow problematic. And so the idea of being a zombie is that you are eating other people for your own nourishment. It's like the total opposite. Yeah. Like, it's like angry and scary and aggressive. And so I think that it's like the opposite of what women are normally expected to do. And I think you could also interpret the whole zombie thing in many different ways. I'm sure many people have their own interpretations. I was just obsessed with zombies, and I was terrified of zombies. And I just obsessively, that's all I wanted to do was be a zombie for a while. And it was a phase. And at the time I couldn't really explain it. Yeah. It's just like, I was just compelled to do this. And I don't want to say that there's one reason, because I think that there's probably many reasons why I did that. It's not like I sat down logically and was like, you know what? I think I'm going to start dressing up like a zombie, because zombies are popular right now. Yeah. And then people will think that's cool.
And that's never really what I thought either. But like at the moment, I thought like, oh yeah, this will work. Like, because to me, I was just approaching it from a completely on the surface aesthetic thing right there. I was like, yeah, makeup, headpiece, like that's cool. Like that's, and they always tell you in band seminars and stuff like that, like do a thing that make people remember you, and we all like get it in our heads, like we have to we have to like have that one thing that makes us pop. And so I was approaching it more of like that. And then again, as I said, as I read more about it, started to dissect it a little bit for myself, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot going on right there than just zombies are fun and I'm on stage.
Well, I think as an aside, I think that is true of, people say about bands, but I did some study with Carrie Cole, who's a vocal coach and also an artist development coach. And her big thing is find out who you really are.
Exactly.
And what thing you can't not do. What's the thing that you feel compelled to do? And if you just do that thing and be, sometimes we don't even want to face ourselves. So the first thing you have to do is face yourself and figure out who you are and then put that out there. And then that's the thing that people will notice and connect with you. So it might seem showy or something, but for me, like the costumes, that is my authentic expression of who I am. And I understand that some people that might seem weird to them, but honestly, who I really am on the inside is playing characters. That is the most authentic expression that I've ever found of myself. And so I think that is true, and that's what I started to do.
Yeah.
Writing the song Zombie Girl, before that, I felt like I was trying to be the singer-songwriter girl. Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to be the singer-songwriter girl. And when I wrote Zombie Girl, that was at the time, that was the most honest song I had ever written in my life. I was looking at kind of the way I had treated men in my life and had just been really mean a lot of the times. And just realizing that I felt dead inside, and that a lot of women I felt like were walking around feeling just dead inside. And I didn't really have any respect for men because I didn't really feel like I'd gotten respect from men. And so I was just like, well, I'm going to go out and use people first then. I kind of had that attitude. And so I was trying to take an honest look at that, but I kind of thought a lot of women are probably feeling that way, and men too. I don't want to exclude men from that at all. Of course, I'm coming from my own perspective,
well, of course,
being a woman, but I'm sure that there are men who relate to that feeling as well. And that was the most honest song I'd ever written. So for me, that was the thing that I latched onto, because in a sea of me trying to create stories or create some artificial ideas, I think like truth always cuts through all the bullshit. Like whatever fake stuff, if you have like one little true thing in there, it just blasts everything out of the water. So for me, all of a sudden that became my obsession. And I had to, once I figured out that I really felt like a zombie, I had to show that to everybody. Like, hey, I'm walking around, but I feel dead inside, and I don't know what to do about it.
You feel like you're just doing things because you're supposed to do them, or because, Or
I just felt angry and terrified, and like an insatiable black hole inside of me. Like, there's just so many cool things about the zombie monster. I think that's why I love monsters too. Yeah. Because I think monsters encapsulate all of these things that we can't put into words, that are like these dark, shadowy things that are all in our subconscious and that we all deal with and we're all scared of and we don't really want to bring out into the light. So I really like to put that stuff up on the stage in the light. Here, let's look at this thing. Yeah. And let's all see what it's like to try on, this part of ourselves. So yeah, that's what really got me into it. And I think I'm starting to move out of being fascinated with just being the darker, scarier characters. But I'm still really interested in costuming and playing characters. The one that I did this summer at Ladybug Festival was the Kali goddess from Hinduism, and that one was a little different for me because she is, destructive power in the universe, and she can be terrifying, but she's also really worshipped and seen as like a nurturing mother, and the fact that you have to destroy in order to create, and it's really seen as a very important part of life. So it's not just this like terrifying ghoulish kind of thing. So I'm kind of moving towards exploring other aspects of this, because it is limiting, I think, if I'm just going to do dark, scary stuff all the time. You know, like
you get pigeonholed or pigeonhole yourself, where they're like, it's Noelle, the zombie girl.
Right. And I don't want to pigeonhole myself, because like I don't really feel dark and scary all the time.
Yeah.
And I have
but
to,
like you were saying about characters, that's a character that you decided to let come out for a while and do her thing. And it's not like you're going to put her away forever, but you're just like, all right, she's had her run, and we're going to go try some other stuff. And it could just be different amalgamations of kind of the same thing to begin with, but you want to explore it from a different way and not just do it the same way every time.
Yeah, and I mean, if I was in some sort of shell, that was what ripped me the hell out of that shell. You know, like I had to embody all of that, like. And I really appreciated that you expressed it that way as empowering, because I think sometimes people just look at me and they're just like, I don't know what the hell she's doing. Yeah. Like, what is that about?
Well, that's fine too, because you can't necessarily fit into anyone's particular box.
Yeah.
And especially from a performance aspect. I mean, you and I both know in the rock world, there's a lot of it's an incredibly male-dominated world, and so there are certain boxes that women who do venture into the music world are expected to fall into. It seems like every few years there's like another box that seems to open up. So like, I don't know, that seems like a male way of saying like, well, look, here's another option. You just be like, well, but I don't want you to make my option for me. You want to make your own options. And when you get up out there and play on stage, for me at least, the first few times I saw you, I remember saying to someone, I'm like, I don't know what she's doing up there. I said, but she needs to keep doing it. I'm like, because I've never seen anything like it.
Well, I don't know what I'm doing either.
Excellent. Nobody does.
I know. Yeah. It's not like I have some like really...
There's no carefully orchestrated plan. Year 1 through 2, zombie. Year 3, Frankenstein.
No, I'm just doing what I feel is an honest expression of what I need to do as a human being to get through life. Yes. Like, that's all I'm doing. Like, yeah, I mean, some people do one thing. I felt like I had to dress up like a zombie for a couple years. Like, I just felt, I guess for me, like, I just felt for such a long time growing up that I had all of this like horrible bloody stuff inside of me, and that I had to try really hard to do what I call like the song and tap dance. Like, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's so great, everybody look at me, I'm perfect and polished and lovely.
There's a level of desperation behind that though, yeah.
Yeah, it's so much pressure to do that, and from not just other people but myself too, that all of that stuff had to come out. Yeah. Like that, and for a while I could not go into a group of people without being like, blah, here's all my bloody guts stuff. Yeah. Because once I opened that box, it was just like, I could not pretend to be polished anymore. Like, something in me was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
You wrote your blog, which I am somewhat disappointed that I haven't seen you write more in lately. It's been a year or so.
That I haven't written my blog?
Yeah.
Oh.
I like it,
the
though.
Shame.
No. I wasn't trying to shame you. I was trying to let you know that there is someone reading it.
Okay. I'm really happy that you're reading it.
Yeah.
I guess I have like, we all have this thing in our mind about if we're bloggers or whatever we're doing, like
podcasters.
Oh yeah, I should be doing more of this thing, and I should be more regular, and that's one of my goals really this year is to...
There's no shame implied in that at all. Like,
no.
I'm really not.
I just feel that way because I do really want to. I've always wanted to write the blog more. Yeah. And that's really one of my goals this year, to make it more regular.
Yeah. The stuff that's in there is great. Even stuff, and that's the thing that I like about what you write, is that just because it's for like 2 or 3 years old, like, you can still read it. It's still absolutely relevant. And I want to bring it back to, like, I think one of the first things I ever read in your blog, and one of the first things that really ever, like, kind of opened up some stuff about you to me that made me kind of delve into your work a little more, is I think it's back in 2013 you wrote about being an abuse survivor, and that piece right there was, when I read it, was incredibly powerful. I'm getting somewhat emotional right now just thinking about it, but it was incredibly powerful. And I read it, and I thought, and you had this line in there, you said, every day this month, I'm going to tell somebody.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, wow. Like, because abuse is always wrapped in silence,
right,
and shame and blame, and that blame is always put on the abused and not necessarily the abuser.
Yeah.
And we don't have to get into the specifics of anything like that. It's all out there. Like if people want to know about this, if people want to read about this, it's all out there. But as you talk about costumes, as you talk about growing up having to put this face on, it's like you had to show the world that like, no, I'm okay, everything's fine, and like everything was not fine at all.
Well, and I think that's part of the dressing up as a zombie too, because I also feel like we're allowed now more in our culture to say, yes, I went through an abusive childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going through therapy or healing from that. But I think especially with women, we're expected to do it in a nice way.
Yeah.
We're supposed to cry and write in a journal.
Yeah.
And like
maybe paint some pictures.
Yeah. And there's not as much of an allowance for you to be like, I don't know what the rating is on this. I start feeling like I want to say curse words.
Oh, no, you can say whatever you want. Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like there's not a real expression for just being like, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, like all of this is fucked up and I do not have to hold on to all of this. And I'm angry and this should not have been the way that my life went.
And I'm not going to do this nicely.
Because I don't feel like it was possible for me. And I don't know if it is for anybody to do it nicely. If
the reaction of healing to horror is to be nice, like that does, or like to do it in an orderly way, it'd be like, well, no, because that was an aberration.
Right.
What happened to you? That was aberration, I think is a good word for it. And so like, as you heal through it, it's like, my healing, in a way, is going to be an aberration as well, because
it's going to be messy and it's going to be bloody and gross, and
it's not even necessarily going to be linear.
People aren't going to necessarily be happy with it, and everything that you want to say and do, and it's not necessarily going to be linear. It's not necessarily going to make sense.
Yeah.
So I am definitely like artistically, metaphorically through my work, trying to share that healing experience with other people. I'm not someone who necessarily goes into like storytelling a bunch of details to people, because I don't think that's necessarily useful. But I do think that the metaphorical journey and talking to people, even just about like my whole album, My Own Frankenstein, I was having a hard time just being able to connect with other people. And a lot of songwriting advice is like, oh, well, you know, you write about like relationships between people, and I felt dead inside, like, and I didn't feel connected to anyone.
The first major relationship in your life ended up being the thing that was wrong. And so how do you move on from that? Like, if that's ground zero, if that's like your starting point,
right,
to build on top of that, it's hard enough to build relationships with people through a normal life,
right?
Much less.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I was totally alone. I mean, I have wonderful, amazing friends and family and people around me, but I always felt a sense of isolation. I was always separating myself from other people. And so I made that album, the whole album. I couldn't write about my connections to other people because I didn't feel that. So all I could do to honestly express myself was to write about my inability to connect with other people. And, you know, I was in a marriage where I felt like I wanted to connect, but I didn't necessarily know how, and I was freaked out. And
you were far away, too, as well.
I was far away from everybody that I had known and grew up with. And, of course, I've made wonderful friends everywhere that I go, but there's a point where I have a wall that I can't get past. Like I connect with people up to an extent, and then there's a point where I just shut down.
Yeah.
And so that was really what I made that album about. So I really write lyrics about, like, you know, the song I Put Up a Wall. Like I just put up this wall and it's safe and quiet back here, and you know, someone might say to me, like, I'm going to get through. And I'm like, no, you're not. You know, it's just like, and that whole idea was like the secret garden. Like I have this sanctuary inside of this wall that protects me from other people. Because it's, like we were saying, a scary thing with connection, because then you do have to kind of give up a sense of safety that you have in not sharing yourself with others. And for me, I've dealt with that a lot because I have such a big imagination. I'll just obsessively fantasize about other people or other, you know, situations that I could be in, because that's a lot safer for me. So I just imagine this whole relationship that I might have, or I imagine this whole world. But that disconnects me from other people too, because it's not real, and as on some level I know that. So I'm just trying to work all this stuff out. And the way that the thing that makes me feel better in my life is to just tell everybody else everything that I'm going through.
Just get it all out there.
And just put it out on stage and put it in my songs. And again, I don't know why I'm that way, but this is just what I'm doing. And if it helps other people, I think that would be great. My experience has been when I've shared things that I've been terrified to tell people my whole life, the overwhelming response is people nodding and going, yeah, me too. And there might be a few people who disagree with you or who make fun of you or who, whatever, they have a negative response. But the overwhelming response of all of those people going, me too, makes the volume go way down on those people. So it's like really even one person looking at you and going, yeah, me too, like makes you feel so much more strengthened that, if you can find the right people to share those things with, and maybe it's anonymously like in the survey. But once you see that other people like feel the same way, and the internet is great for that. It totally changes the way that you feel, and every day I think as a performer I'm becoming more and more able to authentically express who I am, and that's all I care about right now, creating authentic art and being who I am. I think it helps me as a person, and again, like I said, I really hope that it will help other people in some way too.
Well, I think it does. I think it does, and I think it has. I mean, I can just simply speak from my perspective of engaging with your work, is that it has it's given me another way to look at a healing process, and it's given me another way to look at the many, many ways that particularly women can exist as songwriters and artists, and how there's not just a series of boxes that people should fall into. Every little bit of press that I see about you, that finds its way into somewhere, and in a way where you're just like, by the way, I'm putting this out there. Because then if somebody does see that and thinks like, oh, no one out there feels the way that I do, they said like, well, this person not only feels the way that I do, but they're talking about it in front of everybody.
Right. Well, and that's the way I felt when I was a kid. I felt like no one felt the way that I did. That I did feel like a monster. I felt like, because when someone abuses you, they put all of that stuff on you. Yeah. And it's like somehow they're trying to relieve themselves of all of that stuff, and they try to put it on you, and you do feel it. And I didn't feel like anybody else was going through what I was going through, and I wasn't even really able to articulate it or anything. But once I got to a point in 2013 where I felt like I could talk to people, I felt like that's just what I had to do. I just decided one day that I was like, if there needs to be a poster girl, I'll do it. Because for some reason, I don't know whatever people's spiritual beliefs are, but if I have a purpose in life where I feel like for some reason I've just been born this way, that what makes me feel best is telling everybody everything and putting it out there and being public. So if I went through this and me being public about it helps people, then that's just what I'm going to do. And I really do think isolation is the biggest problem with abuse survivors, is because you're carrying all that by yourself, and you have to be silent and secret, and you have to work so hard to maintain this outer view that everything's okay. And it kills people. It literally kills people. It almost killed me. It's killed many people. Just that whole feeling of having to do that. It's a huge weight to carry. And so, I really think that me just getting up and saying, yes, I'm a sexual abuse survivor. People don't want to talk about it because they feel like it's such a shameful thing. And I even think that men have a much harder problem than women do. I think it's more acceptable for me as a woman to say this.
For men to speak up as being sexual abuse survivors. I think we've seen evidence of that time and time again, particularly with, certain large institutions in this world,
Mm-hmm.
whereas men who were abused as boys came out, you know that there are so many more, because
Right.
it's the most unmasculine thing you can think of, to be on the supplicant end
Mm-hmm.
of abuse. And then there's the latent homophobia and stuff that goes in it as well, when really at the end it's not about sexual desire one way or the other, and everything to do with
Right.
with power and
Yeah.
other stuff. No, I definitely agree.
Yeah. And that's why somebody like Jonathan Davis from Korn for me is like such a huge, I mean, just Korn's music has been such a rock for me. And I find it really inspiring because, like I said, I think women have more of a culture of being able to share their experiences and talk about them. And men, it's not as acceptable to do that. And so when men speak out, it's like, it's hugely inspiring to me. And it's like, it just really galvanizes me as a person. So yeah, I just decided that this is going to be who I am. And I put a post on Facebook last year, and I said, like, look, this is just going to be my life. Like, I'm just going to, one of my therapists calls it, carrying a flag.
Yeah.
I'm carrying a flag. And if you have a problem with this, we're not going to be friends anymore.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I had like 300 people write comments on that of support.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody unfriended me.
Yeah.
But I didn't even notice.
No,
Like,
it's like you were saying about like putting it all out there and finding most everyone else to be like, oh, me too, and you get the one or two who aren't into it. You just think, okay, well,
yeah. I mean, some people can't deal with it, and that's fine. I remember one time I put like a poetic kind of quote on my Facebook page, and it was like, rip your heart open in any way that you can, just like get a crowbar and rip it open, or a saw, or like, whatever you're going to do to rip your heart open. And somebody just wrote no. And then they liked their own comment. And I was like, okay, like
I don't even know what that means.
You're not going to do this. Okay. That's totally fine. But for the people who do, obviously if you don't like something, if you don't agree with it, don't listen to me. If this is overwhelming for you and this is too much for you right now or whatever, like, yeah, I'm not for you. But for people who are feeling like, they want to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and Tori Amos for me was a huge, like, I probably would be dead without Tori Amos. Like, probably, I don't think I would have survived my childhood. Like, that was just a huge, she was a huge role model for me. So I just want to do that for other people.
She was huge for me too. I heard her at a young age when I was a teenager, and I don't know. I'm curious. I don't want to put it all on one artist because there's all kinds of life experiences and stuff that you get that form you the way that you are. But I think I have a certain attitude that probably got sparked, like the first time I heard Little Earthquakes or something like that. Or the first time I heard her song about her sexual assault, I was like, wow. I was like, someone can just come out and talk about this. And now we have to deal with it. I'm like 13 when I hear that song. Like, I don't really even understand what it all means, but it's like someone can come out and blatantly, not even poetically really, but just kind of blatantly put it out there. And now we have to deal with it. Like whether we want to or not, it's out there.
Well, because if all of those other people aren't dealing with it, that one person is dealing with all of that by themselves.
Yeah.
And so you get to a point when you're like, I am not going to carry this big, heavy load that is crushing me anymore. And you all are going to help me carry it. Yep. And there's many people who will step up and help you because it helps them too. And if some people can't deal with that, and Tori Amos had said, I remember one time I was at one of her shows and somebody yelled at her and walked out in the middle of me in a gun.
Yeah.
And she just said, she was like, some people can't deal with it, and that's okay. Some people, and some people are in a place where maybe they literally cannot hear this right now. They cannot hear that right now, and they're doing something that's protecting themselves by saying, no, I don't want to listen to this and leaving, and that's totally fine too. But I think that what's true is that we all have. To some extent, we all have things that we're ashamed of. We all have trauma. We all have things that we're upset about. and any one person getting up and putting their stuff out there.
Yeah.
It does it. And like, you're saying even when you were a 13-year-old boy, that makes you feel like you can get up and put your stuff out there too.
Yeah.
We all do feel empathy with each other, and to feel empathy with another person versus sympathy. Sympathy is like looking at another person. I think I'm stealing this from Brene Brown, but like sympathy is looking at another person and going, "Oh, you poor thing."
Yeah.
And empathy is just sitting with somebody going through something and just being there with them and not trying to fix it and not trying to make it better and just being in that moment.
Well, that's another male thing too, as well, is that we want to fix everything.
Yeah, well, women do it too.
Yeah.
I just think that, and that's really kind of what I'm trying to do with my music. I can't tell you that I have a big answer. I don't have any answers, but I'm just like, this is all this stuff.
Yeah.
If you feel similar, I feel like there's got to be people who feel similarly.
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm an English teacher. I have to correct myself. But that people will relate to it and kind of be in that space too. And this album, My Own Frankenstein, I'm starting to move past it as well, and I don't think that this is going to be an album that I'm going to want to perform and listen to for my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that other people are necessarily going to have that as like their jam for their whole life.
Yeah.
But I think for a certain time of your life when you are, I'm thinking of the Peter Gabriel song, Digging in the Dirt. Like when you're going down and digging in some dirt, this is the album for you to listen to during that time. Yeah. And the whole point of it is the idea of like every song is kind of coming up out of that tunnel. And I wrote a song right after that album called Escape Route, which I'll be performing at this show and also at my final release. And that song for me has been my escape route out of that. It's been my tunnel out of that. And I think that other people, they'll go through that kind of dark period, and that's what My Own Frankenstein album and the monsters and all of that stuff. For me, I hope that it's something for other people to go, oh yeah, there's somebody else in here with me, and I'm not the only one. I'm not like isolated in here. But it's not necessarily an album that you're going to want to listen to when everything is totally great in your life, and you don't want to think about those things anymore. Like I think my hope would be that people would like really listen to the album and be really into it and then feel better.
Yeah. And then put it away.
And then put it away.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm starting to do. I'm not there yet, but I'm starting to be in a transition period. My next idea for a project is the whole idea of the space between me and you, like that. And I have a song too in the show where I talk about the space between me and you as a jungle, like this whole venturing into this space. Like, in a way, it was really nice, the feeling of isolation, because I could just have my fantasies in my mind and be by myself. And, I didn't have to deal with anybody else's stuff. So if I am venturing out into this limbo between me and other people, like, how do I navigate that? So that's where I'm going next. That's what my music is going to be about next, and I don't know what's going to happen, so I can't say that I have a plan. Like I don't know what's going to happen.
Where's the plan? Where's the carefully orchestrated lesson plan?
Yeah, a year ago, well, lesson plans are always out the window. Like I said, once the kids walk in. So, like a year ago, I don't think I ever would have thought I would be doing this show alone with all of you. But now that I'm doing it, it feels a lot more like what I've always wanted to do, which is to engage the audience in a transformational kind of concert. All of my concerts, I try to structure going from darkness to light and going from isolation to connection, and doing it in this theater space with the actors and bringing the audience through this whole labyrinth and taking them into another kind of, just like something that they wouldn't do on an ordinary basis. I mean, I think all music does that. All live performance does that. But doing it in a really intentional way and transforming myself through costume, this feels like exactly what I've always wanted to do. So I hope that as I keep going, I'll keep being able to express this true kind of feeling of what I really want to do. So will you be somebody who wants to make masks and
I will be in
contribute,
the corner.
or will you be in the corner?
I will
That's
definitely
totally
be in
cool.
the corner. You might not even know that I'm there.
Yeah, if I weren't performing, I would be the one in the corner too, probably.
It's entirely possible that you will not even know that I am attending.
Yeah, that is
one or the-
totally fine.
No, I will come see you when it's done to prove that I was actually there.
Okay.
But that's great. That's great. This is awesome. Well, Noelle, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down and doing all this stuff and being you and having that particular flag that you're waving around right now. I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate
You're welcome.
the interest in all of your commentary and questions and that you're sharing this with everyone, because if you weren't sharing this with everyone, I wouldn't be able to carry the flag.
Excellent. That's right. Well, I do what I can.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks.
We'll be together till the end of time. 25 o'clock.
Awesome. That's the show for this week. That was Noelle Picara. An amazing talent, an amazing person. It talks just so well, so frankly, so matter-of-factly about a whole lot of things that I feel as people we sort of spin our wheels about, and we talk around and we don't want to get at the heart of it. Just about relationships with people and just being yourself. All these things are important. I was moved just listening back to it, and I was moved while I was having the conversation too. So I hope you took something from that conversation between me and Noelle, because I certainly did. And there are many charities, many groups, many helpful groups out there that deal with sexual abuse of children, that deal with sexual abuse of adults, that deal with abuse of any kind, and I can't possibly list all of them right here on the show. So if you're moved by Noelle's story, and if you're moved by the example that Noelle is trying to set forth in what she does and how she does it, go out there and check out any of those charities, any of those helpful groups, and do what you can. Wow. So, as I mentioned before, Noelle Picara's show, Alone with All of You, at White Pines Theater in Elkins Park, which is just north of downtown Philadelphia. That's February 6th and February 14th. Go to noellepicara.com for all the information that you need about that. All are welcome to come. As she said in the episode, you can get involved or you can sit in the corner. If I go, and I'm very sure that I'm going to go, I will be sitting in the corner, engaging in more of an observation way and not so much a hands-on sort of engagement. But check it out. Alone with All of You at Elkins Park, Alone with All of You at White Pines Theater in Elkins Park, February 6th and February 14th. We're going to go out on a song from Noelle from her record called My Own Frankenstein. The song is called Alone with All of You. That's the song where she got the name for the project from. So I hope you enjoy it. My name is Dan Drago. You've been listening to 25 o'clock. Thanks for being here. Catch you all next time.
Living life from the outside in a costume version of me. I've worn it so long it's glued to my skin. I'm not sure who else I could be. Oh, I could laugh and be witty and flirt with you. I could play the Madonna or whore. I'm an excellent guest at a masquerade, but I can't keep this up anymore. You can't see the glass wall around me. I keep it very clean. I want to reach out and touch you, but there's something in between. I'm always alone with all of you. Alone with like everyone's got it together but me. I'm on fire, but there is no smoke. I waited so long for someone to rescue me. All that was good burned up long ago. I left my body back in 1982. I pulled the old switcheroo. This costume version stood in for me, and nobody ever knew. I need you to look at me just to feel like I exist. I wanna be something more to you, but I don't know what more there is. And still I'm alone with all of you. Alone with all of you. I must be getting better, though sometimes it doesn't feel that way. I wander through a maze of smiles, clutching all I'm afraid to say. I want you to unmask me and make me, raise me from the dead. But I don't really trust you, so I'll stay safe in my own head. Alone